Just me. What do I know?
What are the humans doing?
Do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spinning you lies, but no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pic on their profile. Yeah. Signaling their virtues with a pic on their profile. So if you think you're ready, you don't need more proof. Conspiracy deniers are denying the truth. They fabricate our problems and pretend to provide the best solution, but we all know they lie. They lied about the weapons and they lied about health. They lied about the fact that they're transferring the wealth. You should really notice how they're pushing the fear. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. Yeah. Everybody's not thinking clear. Keep everybody terrified. Yeah, can nothing. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. When you do, you realize that this is a trick. It's getting really stupid now, they're taking the mic. Said, do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spelling you lies. But no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pic on their profile. Yeah. Signaling their virtues on their profile. Hey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chilling with Sasquatch. Tonight we shall be looking at the rough kitties of Africa. These lovely lions had a taste for mankind. Now, of course, there are more than one story of rogue cats in Africa. And while the issue really is that there's very little documentation on the other events in Africa. So, given that circumstance, I have looked into two separate videos on the Tsavo lions, the ghost and the darkness themselves. And I have a theory that there was a third lion acting during that time period because some of the kills attributed to those two lions did not occur. Hey, Tails, welcome to the show. Truth, good to see you. Did not occur in sequence with the rest of them. It seems in some cases that while it's possible for two lions to kill two people at the same time and to do so multiple miles apart, if these two lions were hunting together, it is unlikely they separated to hunt two separate people at the same time. That's just not the way bro lions roll, yo. What is up, everybody in chat? Let's go ahead and do that part. What's up, Princess? Her cat is 14 or 15 years old at this point, probably 27 or 30. I don't know. We're getting in there. We got Mr. Self-Destruction gets the gold. We have Andrew Langlois gets the silver. We got to get down here to ATL to find the bronze. So ATL gets the bronze. Welcome to the show, bud. Good to see you. And as we start up, we got other people. They were in here talking for a minute before y'all showed up. We got Truth Be Told coming in, Tales Told in the Dark. That's an excellent channel there. She's got a future for herself on YouTube. Sewer Dog, welcome to the show, bud. I haven't seen you in a minute. It's good to see you. Let's go. Good to see you, bud. Toe for Life, it's good to have you in here. Russell Sperry, awesome. A non-mouse. Are you a mouse or a man? Well, I am a non-mouse. Absolutely. Okay. She'll pop in, pop out, pop up, pop down. It's what we do. Just make sure you pop the like button, possibly subscribe. You know how that works. You can even comment if you wanted to. You seem to have the ability. All right. So as usual, well, unusual, I don't have a guest at all. I'm not doing that thing at all. We're not doing that. However, tomorrow, after assuming everything gets done like it needs to be done tomorrow and I get back in time and all that, I'm going to have another show on Bigfoot legends, little people's legends, and Neanderthal as a super predator. And that's going to be with Drew on Living History's Mysteries tomorrow, probably around 7, I think is what he said. I'll see if I can dig up that link and chunk it in. Absolutely. Thank you, Truth, for doing the thing that you do. That is the coolest shit I've seen you do in months, except for that one video, man. One trip to Mississippi and you dropped some solid gold, dude. Oh my Lord, that was amazing. I must have pulled 30 shorts out of that thing. Those guys were completely nuts. That one chick. All right, we'll get to that on another show. I'll bring you in for that whole video because that thing is just an example of exactly how policing should not be done. Policing is not the show tonight. It's an awesome story. Y'all should go check it out. Drop a link to that video in chat if you want to, because it is phenomenal. These people go absolutely batty. But we have this usual thing we do, the dulcet tones of Captain Curmudgeon. He's got something to say.
If Eric Swalwell has sex with a Chinese spy in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does she make a sound? If Eric Swalwell leaves Chicago going 75 miles an hour and a Chinese spy leaves San Francisco going 68 miles an hour, what city is the motel located where they're going to have sex? If having sex with Chinese spies was an Olympic event, would Eric Swalwell be Jesse Owens or Michael Phelps? Is it true that every time Eric Swalwell has sex with a Chinese spy, a communist angel gets his red armband? If having sex with Chinese spies was architecture, would Eric Swalwell be Sir Christopher Wren or Santiago Calatrava? If having sex with Chinese spies was classical music, would Eric Swalwell be George Friedrich Handel or Yo-Yo Ma? You didn't think I could bring that all the way back around to China, did you? Of course, you don't need me to tell you that Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy. Everybody knows Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy. No matter what Eric Swalwell does for the remainder of his dull, unexceptional life, the most noteworthy thing about him will always be the fact that he had sex with a Chinese spy. And if there's any more room left on the tombstone, sure, put down that he also enjoyed cutting big, juicy farts on live television. That is a life's work that any man could be proud of, really. But you know who else has taken a shine lately to mentioning the fact that Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy? His Republican colleagues in the House, of all people. It happened today for the third or fourth time since the start of this Congress. It was during what was supposed to be a hearing on the criminal exploitation of foreign minor children on the southern border.
Agreed.
But the Democrats don't want to talk about any of that, naturally. So when it was Swalwell's turn to ask questions of the witness, he just spent the whole time attacking her for some tweet that she wrote on January 6th and spent all of his time acting like the shameless, grandstanding fool that he is, haranguing this woman for being a Trump supporter and not even pretending to ask her any pertinent questions about the subject of the hearing. But the Republicans, it seems they have a game plan now for when Swalwell engages in these ridiculous displays of his. I'm not even sure which Republican it was who did it today. I just had the thing playing in my ear. But he asks the chairman if he can speak for just a moment, and he says to the witness, "Ma'am, I apologize for the antics of my colleague, Mr. Swalwell, a man who shouldn't be calling anybody else's character into question since he's got a bit of a checkered past and had sex with a Chinese spy." And Swalwell he gets very offended whenever someone mentions the fact that he had sex with a Chinese spy. So he jumps up and says, "Damn it, Mr. Chairman, I demand that the member's words be taken down." And he keeps falling into this trap, amazingly, because I think he really is the dumbest man in North America. The smart play, if you're Swalwell, would be to not say anything, since it is a verifiably true fact about the world that you had sex with a Chinese spy. But no, he raises a ruckus and demands that the words be taken down. So then the chairman has to ask the member if he will voluntarily take his words down. And the member says, "Of course, Mr. Chairman, I am happy to have my words taken down. I just need Mr. Swalwell to tell me which specific words he wants taken down." So then Swalwell has to stand there and say, "The part where you said I had sex with a Chinese spy. Damn it." Now, like I said, it's the third or the fourth time, and it just never gets old. They should repeat this drill anytime he goes off topic in any hearing of any of the committees that he still hasn't been thrown off of for having sex with a Chinese spy.
Fantastic. Let me get everything balanced back out right. I've been begging him to up his gain for a minute. I'm having to do the work. Who wants to do work? Work. Bork.
As darkness falls.
Okay, before we get into this, let's cover a few details on. Hello, Snark and Sass, ATL. Good to see you both. Russell Sperry, welcome in. All right, let's cover a few details on what the Ghost in the Darkness was. So, in African mythology, there's not just a devil or a demon. There are quite literally as many different versions of evil as there are people to perpetrate it. And then you have the natural evils of the environment that are also personified by various specific spirits and names and whatnot. The Ghost and the Darkness refer to two specific spirits that take life out of you in the night unexpectedly. So previous to the Tsavo lions, when someone was taken by the ghost, they were taken alone in the bush. They had a heart attack or snake bite, whatever it was that couldn't be determined that killed them. It would be said that they were taken by the ghost, which is of course a terrible translation of the African word for it, which I can't remember at the moment. The darkness was basically the same type of spirit that would come and snatch you up in the night, whether you were out in the bush or in your home. You were killed by the darkness, and it's a great and calamitous evil. Probably dates back bajillions of years, all the way back to various blackout events that would take place from eruptions and whatnot. But these legends are ubiquitous across Africa. It's not just in the Tsavo region. What's up, Rex Hand? Good to see you, bud. Yeah, well, there may have been more than two lions in this particular story, because not all of the killings line up for two lions. The two lions would have hunted together. And when we find brethren lions hunting together, rare is it for them to separate, because one of them is typically injured. In the last episode of Super Cat's Big Cat's Super Predators, how about that? I don't even know the name of my own show. It was determined that in almost every case of a rogue kitty, you have an injury that takes place and the displacement of a population of cats for some reason or another. In the case of Tsavo, you actually had a combination of events where they were building a river or they were building a bridge across a particular gorge. I'm not even sure there was water in the gorge. I think it's just a flood area. And the teeth were bad. Yeah, on one of the lions. The other lion was the first lion's younger brother, and they were operating as a team, which is not unheard of. Hello, Joko. Welcome to the show, bud. Snark and Sass. When which isn't unheard of for young lions. But these lions were older, they were more adept at hunting. And then suddenly a very, very populous meal showed up, all wrapped up in nice little clothing. And it was basically when they moved the railroad into the area of the lions, rather than hunting the local bush people, they started hunting the workers because they were much easier to catch. They were completely unaware of how to go about defending themselves against lions, how not to be tracked, all that stuff. The stuff you learn living in lion country. Like, I don't know, anywhere else, I suppose. If you're actually that close to the ground, growing up there, you're less likely to be a victim of that area, mainly because you understand the dangers that exist in that area. However, this circumstance brought lots of people from other parts of Africa into the Tsavo region who had never had the encounters or the experience to not be a victim of these lions. Also, the activity of these lions was very strange for lions, because remember, at first they didn't know there were two lions. They thought it was only one. And so it was very confusing for the people who were responsible for the safety of the workers to be like, okay, well, we're tracking a lion over here, and then a worker gets snatched right out of the camp. Because all the hunters were out hunting the other lion, the healthy would come in and snatch up a worker and leave. Nobody ever knew it was there, taken by the ghost. And then there were those who would step out during the evening or later that would go out to go gather wood, get buffalo chips, whatever it is they went out to go do, but they would just step away from the light and disappear, taken by the darkness. Now, keep in mind, the railroad kept track of most of these killings, but they did not report them all. Some range from 153 killed to 375. And the railroad claimed 92 or something like that. So the actual number is a bit in question, although, and I can't remember the dude's name, the Great White Hunter that went in to go take care of the problem, encountered a situation he had never seen before. He eventually deduced from the tracks that there were two lions hunting. Although, all right, Truth, that's a different platform, baby. Right? Oh no, I'm ruining everything. I don't like it when things go wrong. So we're going to jump into this tidbit. This video is from, it's all in the description, although it didn't show up to literally right before we went live. So I'm going to drop this link in chat. Now, this guy's been doing some real good content about some relatively esoteric things. It's mostly, like it says, it's nutty history, man. It's just weird stuff here and there. So we're going to go through this. It's a 8-minute video or so. Classic YouTubery, and Sasquatch approves.
As darkness falls in the dry Kenyan bush, the construction workers of the Kenyan-Uganda Railway sleep soundly. A rustle is heard outside of the tent, when suddenly, a lion rips through the canvas, grabbing the ankle of its screaming victims and tearing him away into the night. He is never seen again. For years, animal experts have been baffled by the man-eating lions of Tsavo and what drove the unique pair to feast on human flesh. Today, on Nutty History,
we will discuss the distinction between the panther, the black panther, the American jaguar, and the cougar in another episode. I've got some stuff brought up on it. Google's a little confused on exactly what a cougar is because it's weird. Cougars are genetically distinct from North and South America, but extremely closely related, whereas the South American cougars are just generally just bigger, a little floofier, and the North American cougars tend to look like they've got the mange or something. They're not doing well up here. There was, in theory, there was at least once an American jaguar. and it's believed to still be running around in some parts of upstate New York, Montana, and a few other places. But as far as I know, the only couple that have been picked up tested out genetically as being South American jaguars. They were completely indistinct. But if there's a breeding population of them there, hello, Michael Haywood. Welcome to the show, bud. Rex Hand, good to see you. If there's a breeding population of them, they would be genetically stressed and would be more likely to produce a dark color variant than a normal South American jaguar. Does that make sense? They would almost be selectively bred by the lack of breeding partners, right? So if multiple recessive color traits showed up in North America by way of human introduction, then you would have a higher black large cat selection. There'd be more of a chance of them to produce a black color morph. And I suspect a black color morph may well survive better in North America than a normal puma. Because I mean, cougars are magnificent animals. They are huge. I mean, they'll get 200 pounds and move so quietly through the leaves that you never know they were there. The only one I ever saw was at least 6.5, 7 foot long. Although with the tail there, it's kind of hard to get a good judge on it. But the damn thing was absolutely massive, and it convinced me to bring all the dogs in. I mean, that's what made me look outside in the first place, was a bunch of dogs going absolutely batty, but they weren't going batty in the backyard. They were all barking at the backyard. So I went out and turned on my big ass spotlight. Poof, there's a cougar posted up on a tree stump out there, just licking his paws. I was like, okay, pups, y'all can come right on in. We won't mess with that thing at all. And everybody thought I was crazy until my neighbor saw it. And then my other neighbor saw it. And then a couple of other people saw it. And they showed up and was like, man, that thing's huge. It's way bigger than I thought cougars were. Yeah, they're massive. They're absolutely enormous. Kitty.
We're roaring across Africa to examine how and why the man-eaters of Tsavo earned their namesake. But before we hunt for answers, subscribe to our channel and let us know what extraordinary historical events you'd like to hear about next.
Especially in Siamese cats, they are directly color-based. Their coloring, it directly determines what color their skin is. That's why the patches on the top and the feet are black, is because the... You all right, babe? Okay, so let me check on that.
Construction on the Kenya-Uganda Railway Bridge had barely begun in March of 1898 when the terrifying attacks began. Lieutenant Colonel John Patterson arrived on site as the civil engineer supervising the project. Just a few days later, one of his porters went missing. After the search, his mauled and mutilated corpse was discovered. Fearing a lion might be the culprit, Patterson set out the following day to find the animal responsible. Instead, he discovered more bodies. For the next 9 months, the railway workers lived in a constant state of fear as the lion attacks grew more brazen. Overnight, the Tsavo lions would enter the camps in the darkness, dragging victims from their tents. In this jungle, the lions were definitely not sleeping tonight. As one worker wrote, bones, flesh, skin, and blood, they devoured all and left not a trace behind them. The rail workers...
Well, when it comes down to that, it comes down to the actual full genotype of the species. And hello, Mark. Welcome to the show, bud. The species of cougar does not carry a dark color morph gene. There's no recessive gene in at least North American cougars that would permit a black color morph or dark color morph of cougars. However, that doesn't mean you can't have lighter colored cougars and darker colored cougars. They would all just kind of fit the species type, you know. In the case of genotypes versus phenotypes, the phenotype of a cougar would be more along the lines of like the Rocky Mountain cougars that are typically heavier, furrier, fuzzier, and darker, versus the East Coast cougars, which are typically lighter, more lithe, and have less general hair in general. So they're less likely to be as they're more it's generally one cone. You'll have little color differentiations on the skin, on the fur itself, but it ranges from light to dark in grades, not a black patch, whereas jaguars, and if there are American jaguars do carry a melanism trait. They can produce the classic panther. Oh, no. It depends on exactly what kind of high plains cougar you're talking about. If she was wearing cowboy boots, you were perfectly safe, my son.
Attempted to mount defenses to stop the terrifying predator. After all, can't humans outsmart a couple of big cats? They instituted night curfews and sentinels to keep watch. Who wants to volunteer for that job? They held campfires and used drum beating in an attempt to scare the lions away. No luck. They even built homemade barbed wire fences out of whistlethorn trees, but the lions managed to leap over or crawl through. Chaos and terror reigned. During one attack, so many workers climbed up into the same tree to escape that the whole thing came crashing down to the ground. Luckily, the lions had already selected a less agile victim that night. The railroad workers began to flee the area by the hundreds, which seems fair given the hostile work environment. The British colonials sent officials to intervene and get the project back in working order. Apparently, they thought paper pushers were their best bet to taking down two bloodthirsty lions. According to Patterson's account, a district officer, Mr. Whitehead, and his assistant, Abdullah, arrived at...
Pretty sure Sam has a show to later tonight. I believe it's a Screaming Into the Void episode. I don't know. I looked at it right before we went live. I don't remember. I was doing stuff.
Train depot in the evening and were immediately under attack. Mr. Whitehead, despite this unfortunate name, was lucky, escaping with 4 claw marks down his back. Abdullah was killed by the lion, proving that all you have to do is selfishly sacrifice your peers for your own survival. Wait, are
bonus.
We saying that? More officials arrived, along with 20 armed Indian infantrymen, to kill the Tsavo lions. But instead, it was actually Project Lead John Patterson who ended up being their secret weapon. Though on the project for his engineering
Danny, welcome to the show,
Patterson
bud.
had experience hunting tigers as part of his military service in India. As the lions stalked him, he began to stalk them in return, setting up traps and hiding out in trees to ambush them. After many unsuccessful attempts, Patterson was able to shoot one of the lions in the hind legs, but it escaped injured. Finally, in December of 1898, Patterson killed the first of the man-eaters. The lion clocked in at 9 feet and 8 inches and required 8 men to bring its body back to camp. Over the course of the next 20 days, the second lion was shot twice before Patterson was able to kill it with 3 more rifle shots. He claimed the animal died gnawing on a fallen tree branch, still trying to reach him. After the lions were killed, construction resumed and the railway bridge was swiftly completed within the next 2 months. Of course, it was then destroyed less than 20 years later in World War I, proving humans to be the reigning force of destruction once again. Back in business, Patterson kept the lion skins for a time as rugs in his home. Eventually, he sold the skins and skulls of the Tsavo.
All right, can you imagine coming into somebody's house and you see these 2 lion skins on the floor or hanging on the wall or laying over the back of the couch or whatever? And it's like, oh, wow, lions, what are they? Oh, that's the ghost of the darkness. I'm sure you've heard of it. Killed everybody. I killed them. That's some big dick energy right there, man. Like, that's serious. Wow.
Man-eaters to the Field Museum in Chicago, where they remained safely and securely in display. Still, for years, everyone wondered what drove the animals for their strange lust for human blood.
Yes, one of the lions had broken teeth. In fact, all of his canine and 2 or 3 molars on this side were missing. It was thought that it was from a gunshot that had failed to kill the lion. So it's possible that it was more injured than even that. However, the brother lion, as far as I know, had nothing wrong except for a broken nail. Like literally had one of his claws ripped out of his nail, and it was one of his claws ripped out of his paw, and it was infected. And this is how one of the ways he was able to determine that there were 2 lions hunting was because one was missing a claw. So That one was injured, but the injury seemed recent and much more recent than the actual attacks took place. You know, it was current. Like the attacks had been happening for months, and this injury was a recent injury, probably received while attacking a human. You know, it's likely somebody got a machete swipe off on them, because that was a very common self-defense weapon at the time. Almost no one carried guns there. What's up, Janica? Good to see you. Samuel the Infamous.
Pindar, welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Next Tuesday, when I say we, I mean the royal we, that being Scully's House of Thrillers, I think I got that right, and a whole selection of other channels are getting together to run a couple of what do they call them? Rehearsals on the Wizard of Oz. I myself am not going to reveal who I am in the cast unless somebody else already knows. Otherwise, I'm not going to say. I'm going to leave it to be
a surprise.
You know, but that'll be on probably on Scully's channel. I don't know if he's going to let everybody stream it to their own channel or not. He hasn't said. No, I haven't asked. So that's none of my business. It's his channel. If he wants something done, he'll do it. And if he wants it done by me, he'll ask. I hope. But yeah, no, the Ghost in the Darkness is a really interesting story, and it's unusual in the fact that there were so many witnesses, and yet the body count can't be decided on. It was eventually decided 153 for whatever, 157 were killed, but that doesn't take into account the ones that were killed before they started taking records, or the few that died after the lions were killed, because there were another 24 people killed by some mysterious force in the night that was just never mentioned again, because they killed the lions. The lions are dead. You don't have to worry about them. You know,
put them up. I'll fight you with one hand tied behind my back. I'll fight you two at a time. I'll do it.
I love that crowd. No, I'm not the Cowardly Lion. So they found somebody that does that a little bit better. I don't read in the voice of the Cowardly Lion very well. I was trying to convince him to let me do the Wizard of Oz as James Earl Jones.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
One popular theory held that if the lions were hunting humans, they must have been lacking their more traditional food sources. At the time, the Tsavo region was in the midst of a 13-year drought.
You don't really want me to do that bit, do you?
Because I was the king of the forest, not prince, not duke, king.
It's generally drier and hotter than other African plains. One reason that male lions like these two are maneless. The area was also experiencing an outbreak of rinderpest, a cattle virus that might have killed off most of the lions' food supply. However, scientists later conducted isotopic analysis to determine the lions' diet and found that humans only made up about a third of what they ate. This led them to believe that people were more of a supplement to the Tsavo lion's diet rather than main source. A human a day right before you work out. While it's possible the drought and rinderpest were...
wasn't he responsible for Snagglepuss too? I think he was responsible for the voice of Snagglepuss.
Exit. Stage left.
I mean, it's almost the same voice. It's very similar to Yogi Bear, and I know that wasn't Yogi. That was Mel Blanc, right? Did Yogi Bear, I think. Oh yeah, Larry played the Cowardly. That's true.
A contributing factor, they probably weren't the main reason the animals turned to human consumption.
What's up, Freaky Geek?
The Tsavo River, where the construction work took place, had a dark history before the man-eating lions entered the scene. It was also a major path for the caravans of the Arab slave trade. The death rate for slaves was high, especially due to the sleeping sickness, a disease transmitted to humans from the Africa tsetse fly. The bodies of slaves that died were dropped directly on the route, which may have led lions to scavenge the remains. Human remains of the Hindu railroad workers may also have been in the area from ritual invitation, which was an abbreviated cremation process. Both could have caused the lions to develop a specific craving for humans. The most horrifying theory of all? That perhaps the Tsavo lions simply killed for the fun of killing.
Well, they are big cats, and cats are the most deadly creature on Earth. Pound for pound, they kill more species than any other two combined.
While John Patterson claimed that the lions killed a whopping 135 men, today's scientific research concludes that they actually only ate about 35 people between them. It's possible the discrepancy is due to a little bit of boasting on Patterson's part, but it's also possible that the lions didn't eat all or any of every person they killed. Human encroachment threatens the lion's territory and habitat, and continues to be one of the main catalysts for lion attacks today. There's no doubt that the laborers of the Ugandan-Kenyan Railway were behind enemy lions. The lion's unstoppable hunting of the workers certainly makes it seem like there was some level of play involved. And lions are one of the few species other than humans to kill for sport. Tsavo lions in particular have more testosterone than the average lion, which might be a reason for their notoriously aggressive behavior. So, what's your theory on the Tsavo lions? Was it hunger? Was it supernatural? Was it sport? Let us know in the comments along with whatever nutty history you want to know next.
All right, so this is going to be a bit repetitive because we have 3 different videos about the same batch of attacks, right? That was Nutty History doing the Tsavo lions. One of my favorite videos that's coming up here in a little bit. The Lions of Tsavo versus a Raptor pack by Bob Kimlin, one of the best narrators on YouTube. It's one of my favorite videos he did. Well, I mean, I got a bunch that I really, really, really like, but this one is especially intriguing. And most of these videos are fairly short, so they're not just stop and get back to the beginning to begin again anew. All right. So this is from another channel who took a deep dive into this whole concept, although how deep it could possibly be, I don't know. The intriguing part to me is homie's YouTube name is Scar. That's the channel. That's cool. That's an excellent name for something talking about big, rough kitties.
In the year 1898, a small region of Africa called Tsavo became one of the most dangerous places on the whole planet. More than 100 people were mauled and devoured by a pair of legendary, maneless lions. The story began in March 1898, when a team of Indian workers led by British Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson arrived in Kenya to build a bridge over the Tsavo River as part of the Kenya-Uganda Railway project. The project, however, was doomed from the very beginning. Tsavo was desolate and scorched, the sandy soil covered with tough thorn bushes and trees. The region had long been a rich hunting domain for the lions, and the railroad workers did little to correct the lion-friendly environment. The railway's crews were virtually all brought into East Africa from India. In western India and southern Pakistan, where most of these workers originated, there were no large dangerous carnivores that people had to protect themselves against. So these people basically had zero knowledge of how to deal with the predators of African savanna. These workers and Patterson had no idea about the danger they were facing. It was at that time when a pair of man-eating lions began falling on the railway workers, attacking the camps at night, pulling men out of their tents and consuming them on the edges of camp. Just a few days after the arrival of John Patterson, 2 of his workers had disappeared. The word spread that lions were the culprits, but Patterson didn't believe it. Just a couple of days later, when a guard was dragged from his tent by lions, Patterson was called onto the scene, and upon inspection, he found lion prints and human heel and hand impressions from the man's obvious attempts to be spared. Patterson followed the tracks of the lions for several miles before stumbling upon the remains of the doomed man, Even at this point, he had no idea about the magnitude of the problem that these lions were going to be. These lions were very bold and experienced, and night after night, they kept on killing the vulnerable laborers. Soon enough, Patterson himself heard and saw the pair of gigantic male lions who were stalking his camp at nights for countless weeks. Patterson was an experienced hunter, but he couldn't outmaneuver this duo of monsters who were stalking and killing his workers. These beasts were somehow able to anticipate his every move, and with the next struggling victim caught in their jaws, they would vanish into the wilderness. Patterson was doing everything in his power to end the reign of terror, but the killers were always one step ahead of him. They easily avoided him and kept up their hunting routine. On one gruesome night, the pair consumed their victim within earshot of Patterson's own tent, but he wasn't able to do anything except for listening to the bone-crunching sounds. At this point, Patterson was frustrated, as the estimated number of victims was as high as 100. As the attacks mounted, hundreds of workers fled from Tsavo, halting construction on the bridge. Patterson set multiple traps and tried several times to ambush the lions at night from the trees, but his attempts were unsuccessful, and lions always eluded the danger. Embittered and furious with multiple failed attempts, Patterson finally hit the jackpot when he shot the first lion on 9 December 1898. Patterson wrote in his account that he wounded the first lion with one bullet from a high-caliber rifle. This shot struck the lion in its hind leg, but it escaped. Later, it returned at night and began stalking Patterson as he tried to hunt it. He shot it through the shoulder, penetrating its heart with a more powerful rifle, and found it lying dead the next morning, not far from the tree he had been sitting on the whole night. A few days after the death of the first lion, the second lion was also shot by Patterson. The shot was fired from the scaffolding that Patterson had built near a goat killed by the lion. Injured lion quickly escaped the scene. About 11 days later, Patterson set another scaffolding near a live bait and waited. As the night fell, the wounded killer emerged from the thick bushes, but Patterson was ready, and he shot 5 bullets with at least 3 hitting the beast. The already wounded animal still refused to go down and rushed towards the bushes. When they found the lion the next day, Patterson shot it 3 more times with the same rifle, severely crippling it, and he shot it 3 times with the third rifle, twice in the chest and once in the head, which killed it. He claimed it died gnawing on a fallen tree branch, still trying to reach him. After months, the reign of terror was finally over. Both lions were huge, measuring more than 9 feet from head to tail. Between them, the man-eaters had slaughtered more than 100 people in the Tsavo region.
Hello, Ace.
Patterson, who had the skins of the beasts,
Ace Adama?
sold them to the Field Museum of Chicago in
Axel
1924, where they are still on display.
Nah, that was a pretty good one. Nice, short, sweet, to the point. Now we're going to get to the one that we all are here for, really.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm Bob Gimlin.
In a parallel reality where lions... Would you stop it? Oh, my God. My fucking computer. It's really dumb. It's not very smart at all. And, okay, it's back. All right, so in an alternate reality where velociraptors and lions occupy the same space, who wins? I mean, let's be honest. Velociraptors are full-on pack hunters. Lions are full-on prod hunters. Is there a difference? Debatable. But Bob Gimlin is one of the better narrators, and he covers a lot of Sasquatch stuff, cryptid type things, a handful of it's similar in flavor to Hammerson Peters, but he has a little bit of a wider breadth. Hammerson Peters typically does North American or specifically Canadian folklore and history, whereas Bob Gimlin just does whatever strikes his fancy in the cryptid department or in the unusual story department. This is actually quite a bit outside of his bailiwick. He doesn't typically do what ifs, but in this case he does. And it's phenomenal.
The lions of Tsavo launched a historically unprecedented assault on a railroad construction site, and in 1899, Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson put a stop to their reign of terror. But that's no reason to suspect that that was the end of the man-eaters. In fact, so prolific and so terrible were their deeds that they earned the dubious distinction of being sent straight to hell. They took it as something of an honor, considering how few other animals earned that privilege. But as may be expected from animals, they didn't follow the rules, and the lions made no distinction between the tormented and the tormentors. They quickly became too much for even the devil himself to tolerate, and with a snap of his fingers, he vanished them. But as may be expected from the Prince of Lies, he did so carelessly, and the lions spiraled through time and space until they found themselves in an unfamiliar land, with unfamiliar sights and unfamiliar sounds. They didn't know the details, of course, but they were striding the swampy basins of the Cretaceous period, a little over 110 million years before they died the first time. Lions by nature are dominant creatures, and these two in particular were more that way than most. From their first steps to their last breaths, they had lived without fear and without hesitation. These lions had yet to learn that they could be put down, in any meaningful way at least. They saw massive creatures, but the lions knew to give them space. Not worth it, as no good ever came from tangling with giant things. They already figured that one out 110 million years later. But among the denser jungle, they felt unequaled, a matter they would be delighted to prove. Night came and they were even more confident, and something was happening. They heard it before they smelt it, and they smelt it before they saw it. It was a pack of bipeds, about a dozen or so in total. The lions were rather fond of groups of bipeds at night. Again, lions don't care much for specifics, but these creatures would one day be called Deinonychus, relatives of the velociraptor. This pack had 12 members,
Welcome in,
somewhere
Chad.
between
Good to see you.
150 and 200 pounds apiece. Some may consider Deinonychus an apex predator of its time, not because it was the largest or most powerful animal of the early Cretaceous, but because nothing hunted them, and that's because they held grudges. And even the more horrific terrestrial terrors knew that consuming one raptor was simply not worth the headache the remaining raptors would cause for as long as they needed to. And because even the big stuff left them alone, Deinonychus was not exactly known for being stealthy, unless it was hunting. It is a misconception that a creature is smarter just because it is more recent. Deinonychus was just as smart, if not smarter, than some of the smartest animals alive today. Like crows, but maybe more so. Deinonychus was social and intelligent enough to solve even complex problems, which was good because they would soon realize that they have a big problem on their hands. And like many intelligent animals, the Deinonychus were having what in human culture may be called a political dispute. A younger raptor decided that a new alpha was necessary. He thought the current alpha was complacent, corrupt, and inefficient. The current alpha's supporters liked the current order of things and wanted no change. But the challenger wasn't alone in his concerns. His supporters screamed in raptor speak, "Drain the swamp." The up-and-coming contender was making good on his populist claim to the throne. In fact, he was considering releasing his death grip on her throat just to see if she would grovel before being gutted by a terrible claw, when suddenly, two unfamiliar and terrible things leapt from the bush. The raptor pack was so taken aback by this brazen intrusion into their congregation that they were too stunned to act. The newcomer knew that he was actually the intended target, but just in time, he shielded his body with that of his former leader. They were once really good friends, believe it or not. Raptors are rarely hasty creatures, and they didn't want to engage this unfamiliar enemy without some thought first. This proved to be a highly unusual situation. Unopposed, the lions galloped off into the night, back to the place they had already decided on sheltering. It was in the eaves of a riverbed, so it felt familiar. They reveled in their meal and new life, and the brotherhood they shared glowed like molten iron. But something was happening 7 miles away by the raptor camp. The new chief was not happy. He won by default, by chance. He worried his pack would think he didn't earn it, and that made him aggressive. In social raptor culture, the whimpering and whining and pleading of the dying is how power is consolidated. By no fault of his own, his victory was stolen from him. Technically, he hadn't earned the win, and he worried his pack wouldn't take him seriously as a leader until they saw him draw blood. And what could be a better way to draw blood than by eliminating a threat? Clearly, the lions were active at night.
Okay, the saber-tooth. First of all, saber-tooths are not cats. They are not any more closely related to cats than they are to bears. Although the convergent evolution involved is virtually obvious. I mean, clearly these things look so much like cats. They're built so much like cats that they're very likely to hunt, move, and act very much like cats. Take the civet. The civet's neither a cat nor a bear, but somewhere in the middle. But it runs around doing the whole omnivorous thing that the bears do. But then you screw around and get close enough to one, it's liable to take a chunk out your face. It's a predator. Never make the mistake of thinking that just because it eats coca beans or coffee beans, and you can get a very expensive type of coffee from its poop. Yes, from its poop. I said that out loud and I meant it, and that's true. And if anybody wants to go look up what civet coffee is called, I'd love to remember it again. So yeah, you can't take Smilodon or any of the saber-toothed cats from North America as a cat, although it's a good analogous being to being a cat. Does that make sense? He was attacked by a Honda Civic? I don't think that's how that works, man.
So the new Raptor chief deduced that perhaps it would be best to wait until day. The sun was high, and the temperature was similar to what the man-eaters were accustomed to, though a bit more humid. They had enjoyed their first meal from this older world. It smelled like crocodile, but tasted like ostrich, which the lions found curious. They were napping when suddenly they heard commotion from out of their hole. It was the chirping of the strange bipeds. The keen nose of the Raptor chief easily tracked the trail of the unfamiliar beasts and the stink of his slain former commander. Raptors, if you didn't know, are not above showboating. The raptors hissed and gallivanted. Even today it's common among their ilk. The Raptor pack's fighting songs and dances of war had historically proven to deter some of the greatest predators to ever walk the earth. So it was to their great surprise that it had no effect on the lions. It took over a dozen chunks of high-velocity lead to take down these brutes, and even that didn't really stop.
Yes, but the actual brew made from the civet, from the beans eaten and digested mostly by the civet, has a really, in my brain, I can't remember the name, but never eat civet pork and beans. Oh Lord, grant me the strength.
Stop them. The Raptors didn't know it yet, but these lions were not to be intimidated. Best day ever, growled the first lion in lion speak. But the second man-eater was too focused to speak. He wanted blood, and that fact made his eyes glow. Flee or die, sang the Raptor pack. But they ate those words. It wasn't much of a battle. Typically, Deinonychus didn't actually have to make good on their threats. But these lions certainly presented an atypical situation. The lions lunged with a deafening roar, and half the Raptor pack immediately lost confidence in their new chief's decision-making skills, and they turned tail. But the Raptor captain's newly appointed lieutenants stood staunch. They were not prepared to yield and disappoint their new commander. After all, were they not Raptors? The first lieutenant used his namesake and greatest asset. He lashed out with his terrible claw. He went straight for the eyes with his 4-inch sickle. Indeed, it lacerated the first man-eater's face, but the mammal got the better end of the deal. The Raptor had to come in close to deal his blow. Too close. The man-eater came down on the Raptor, and just over 400 pounds of force pinned the dinosaur to the ground and pushed until the lieutenant's lungs had no room to expand. Some say size isn't everything, but it certainly was here. 400 pounds broke 150. The second man-eater went straight for their obvious leader, the captain of Raptors. The Raptor captain's third lieutenant tried to stop the mammal, but again it was no contest, and a dinner plate-sized paw broke bones. And though the Raptor captain wasn't overly pleased to see his most loyal allies roundly fail, this indeed all was part of the plan. I'm not sure how much you know about raptors, but their motives are never clear until after the fact. As the first man-eater took great delight in battering his prize deep into the rocky earth, the second man-eater took off in pursuit of the Raptor captain. On the grassy plains of Africa, the man-eater would have been upon him.
Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the show, bud. Yeah, no, I'm in that school of thought. The cougar should worry about me. I'm not just going to wax him because he's there. I'll make him have to do something. He's got to injure something on my property or about my place, or I don't care. He can just go be a cougar. He's fine. But threaten me or my children, and that is the last threat that ever occurs from that quarter.
But home field advantage won out. The fleet-footed biped had the edge through this dense and familiar jungle. The lion pursued the raptor all the way to the bank of the river and watched the raptor skip over several boulders. The water still rippled from where the dinosaur's tail feathers tickled the surface. The raptor captain danced a death dance on the opposite bank, challenging the lion with what would translate in human culture as inappropriate gestures. "Coward," screamed the raptor. "You're the one running," growled the second man-eater. He eyed the boulders, and indeed, he was about to make the same jump when he noticed familiar shapes, and though the shapes were familiar, their size wasn't. Massive armored heads peered from the water without so much as a ripple. They were drawn away from the murky bottom by the raptor's calculated disruption of the water's surface. "Clever girl," thought the lion, and he walked home. The first man-eater took a nap. He was the first man-eater because he was the first to die in Tsavo. He tuckered himself out from playing with his new pet. He never named his pets. They didn't tend to last very long. The wound on his face barely bothered him at all. In fact, he had gotten worse from the walls of thorn bushes that the humans had foolishly built to trap themselves. Both lions had full stomachs from the welcomed intrusion.
That's the coffee beverage. Coffee luwak. That stuff right there. You can't just go pick coffee beans to get this stuff. You've got to let the civet pick its own coffee beans. Hey, there's the man with the master plan. Wait, why are you? How are you not? How are you not moderated? That makes no sense. And it won't let me moderate you. That is weird. It's not letting me do nothing anymore. Crap. Everything just crapped out. Are we still live? It's not letting me do it. We'll do it next time. I don't know what. But anyway, I'm gonna be on his show tomorrow. I don't know if we're co-streaming or what, but it's gonna be on his channel for sure. I need to go dig that link up, I guess. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll do it.
The other raptor who tried to impress his captain still gurgled on the earth beside the den. He was too wounded to move, and he stank in the sun. Only 24 hours ago, the raptor pack had 12 strong. Now they had only 9. And though the first man-eater had drifted off to sleep, the second man-eater was too angry to relax. He didn't like what happened at the river. Not one bit. The second man-eater said, "It was clever. I hate clever." The first man-eater was beckoned from a dream by his friend's utterance. "Can I ask you a question?" asked the first man-eater. "You just did, and no," rumbled the second man-eater. The first man-eater was accustomed to his friend's attitude. "What are we going to do if we can't find any lady lions?" he asked nervously. "What a weird thing to say. You're so weird. Remember when you stole that bag of rice because you thought they would grow into baby humans? Well, there were literally thousands of humans there and not one baby. They have to come from somewhere. Remember when you tried to eat that mattress?" interrupted the second man-eater. "It smelled so good." "Enough," growled the second. "We kill things. That's what we do. It doesn't matter if we're here, there, or anywhere. We find things that are alive and we don't stop until they're not." "Okay," sighed the first man-eater. "You have to relax, though." And he fell asleep to wonderfully evil dreams. But the second man-eater, he would not relax. He was still going over the incident at the river. The croc ostriches knew about traps. He hated traps. He was all too well acquainted with traps. You can't disembowel a trap. No glory. He was going to eat that raptor.
Welcome in, Holistic
The setting
Media.
sun
Good
brought
to see
cool
you.
air, and the lions felt it was time to rise. Hunting would not commence until midnight, but they were restless, and decided it was due time to learn more about their surroundings. Stealthily as ever, they set out, but they hadn't gone very far before they heard the cackling of the weird bipeds. They shared a knowing look, and silently crept to yet another sunken riverbed, this one bone dry. Unfamiliar plants grew thick along the edges, where enough rich soil had accumulated to allow their growth. And on the floor of the riverbed stood the captain of raptors. He looked at them quizzically. The first man-eater merely grumbled, "God, croc ostriches are dumb." But the second man-eater was filled with the same rage that gave him a page in the history books in the first place. He growled in the tongue of lions, "Why are you not afraid? Do you not know who I am? I am death in the tall grass and blood on the breeze. I am legend and legion. I am the knife in the back and midnight screams. I am wrath, look at me and know it. I am the ghost in the darkness, and I'm going to eat you." The raptor captain had no idea what this giant possum was trying to say, but he liked its attitude. And so the man-eaters lunged into the riverbed, but the raptor simultaneously climbed out the other side. Fingers come in handy that way. The man-eaters tried in vain to follow the raptor, but the foreign Cretaceous foliage was encased in a hard shell. The lion's claws either slashed through it or bounced off it, and it grew thick in the silt by the sides of the ravine. The raptor captain stood at the precipice of the riverbed, and he wrung his hands together. Both the first and second man-eater stared at the raptor with unfathomable rage when they heard sounds, familiar in some ways, but unfamiliar in others. It was the sound of a heavy body and hard, flat feet moving fast. Chirps and barks of the raptor pack could be heard over the pounding of the titan feet. An unfamiliar and massive beast came hurtling down the sunken riverbed, with raptors behind it like a cattle prod. The riverbed walls were too narrow for the beast to go anywhere but forward, so forward it went. The first man-eater cried, "Hell turtle!" "Out! Climb!" roared the second man-eater with madness in his eyes. 5 tons of armored
The British cougar is far more dangerous than its American counterpart.
flesh came upon them, and they threw themselves at the walls. The first man-eater managed to get his forelimbs to firm earth. He grinned, but he chose the wrong side, and there was a sickle-shaped claw waiting for him. The raptor captain slashed the first man-eater's face and pried the paw from its point of purchase. The raptor captain knew enough about tendons to do so devastatingly. The first man-eater fell. On his chest fell a foot with 10,000 pounds of weight above it, and then another foot. And as it had been millions of years later, the first to die in Tsavo was also the first to die in that commonplace Cretaceous ravine. But the second man-eater clung desperately to the stalks. He had fire in his eye. He managed to avoid the slashing armor and stomping feet, but he was unaware of the tail. He didn't know the big stuff had tails. A ball of bone struck him in the back, and that massive ossified bone routinely shattered the bodies of beasts 50 times the size of the man-eater or more. His back offered no resistance, and it broke. The second man-eater fell deftly, and the giant kept going, and the raptors circled. The man-eater couldn't feel or even move his hind legs. Every breath radiated fireworks of agony through his chest. Once again, his body was broken, but his mind was malice. Still he reared up. He would have roared, but he knew he'd need every bit of oxygen for this, his second fight to the death. Had the raptors truly wanted to insult and dishonor the man-eater, they would have simply walked 15 feet away and let him pass away in peace. But that is not the way of the raptor. The raptor captain still needed to draw blood, and he needed his pack to see it. And of course, this was his favorite kind of fight, one with a devastating advantage. And though 500 serrated teeth ripped the man-eater to pieces, he still took 2 with him to the grave. The raptor captain, no, he thought, the Lord of Raptors, sang a song that night. The song was a testament to the fact that no mammal would ever again challenge his species. And though the man-eaters' bodies broke there, they didn't really go anywhere. once rejected from death, always rejected, and their spirits floated in nothingness, like ghosts in the darkness. But it wasn't over for the man-eaters, far from it, for they would float in the abyss of history unknown for 110 million years, and no living thing would hear so much as a whimper from the man-eaters until 1898, when Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson came to Africa to oversee construction on a bridge. Anyway, I thought of this recently after having my wisdom teeth removed. I wrote down some notes and then in the coming days struggled to make sense of what I had in mind, but once I figured it out, I thought it would make a fun video for you. I strongly encourage you to check out my video on the full story of the Lions of Tsavo, because sometimes the imagined just can't compare with the documented. Make sure you like and subscribe for more soon-to-come content, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening.
That's one of the things I love about Bob Gimlin. Not only does he do extremely thorough deep dives into various aspects of history and whatnot, okay, all that's already been covered. And then we have Moggs. We are hosting Mogollon Monster from Florida Saturday evening at 8 p.m. He's coming in to discuss his recent Bigfoot conference trip, his usual travels, and what he's planning on doing with his channel in the next couple of years, actually. He largely does live streams, basically talking about just random stuff, but it's a corner of the internet that you can go and talk about the really, really weird things. If you've ever seen a UFO, if you've ever seen the pig bear man bear pig, whatever you want to call that thing, dog man or anything else, it's he's really open to discussion when it comes to different types of cryptids and whatnot. And he's actually relatively well known in the cryptid communities in general. In fact, several of my regular viewers come from his viewership, which, you know, I absolutely love it when that type of stuff happens, because that's what this whole thing is about, is sharing everyone that wants to be shared, you know, like a loose hooker. Yeah, I didn't say that. That wasn't me. That was the one-armed man. Okay, so I really don't have an after dark plan for tonight. I actually have to go cook and feed my wife Squatch before she decides to take my face off. But who was it? Yes, Andrew. You should worry more about bobcats than cougars for multiple reasons. One, there are far more bobcats than there are cougars. For every cougar running around, there might be 50 bobcats, not necessarily in the same area, but you know, there's enough of them to make it sketchy. Also, hey Carrie, welcome to the show. No, you're just gay, you're not late this time. Yeah, you missed it. You're not just late. What was that? Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming by, Ace. Good to see you, bud. And bobcats are far more common. And there was a school of thought a few years ago. I don't know if it still holds any water, but there was a school of thought a few years ago that what's up, Easy? That bobcats were part of the reason why cougars had such a drop in population the farther south you get. Because lynxes operate in the colder areas and higher areas of the country and in Canada. So the farther north you get, the more likely you are to run into lynx and not bobcat. But there are a few spots where their territories overlap. However, bobcat pretty much overlap all of cougar territory. So when humans came in and started hunting the game, and yeah, no, those are pixie bobs, bub. They don't keep bobcats, not legitimate bobcats, as pets. They keep half-breed bobcats that are bred with normal house cats and still have the bob-tailed features, but typically like a striped calico type pattern, maybe some tortoiseshell going on in there. But for the most part, if you attempt to pick up a feral baby bobcat, you will be missing some fingers and need stitches. I have encountered a few. when you come across a dead bobcat on the road and you find out it's got 2 or 3 kittens and you have that same idea and you walk over and the first one gives you 5 stitches, the second one gives you 6 stitches, you don't really look real hard at that fourth one that's over there holding a switchblade, right? Because these things will bleed you. They have no training, no taming, no, they were never, ever domesticated. There is absolutely I thought Maine Coons were more from lynxes, not from bobcat. Anyway, that's all neither here nor there. We will cover that crap in the next. Big cats, super predators. I appreciate y'all coming by. This has been one hell of a show. I enjoyed the living hell out of it. I'm not going to lie to you. And I love each and every one of you like a brother and a sister. Now, the question is, does anybody want to watch a movie after the show? Because I might do some of that stuff. Although I got to make a run. I got to do some. Oh, no, it's going to melt down before I can get there. There we go. All right. My whole my screen looks like a puzzle. Did that go up? Yeah, okay. I'm going to guess that the end button is still where it's supposed to be. Hey, that's working now. Cool. We'll do that then. Intros, outros, or this.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.